I can. Hi.
We've had a few minor hiccups this morning, nothing major. But I think what we are trying to do this morning is do our opening words, our child's writing, that'll come up at 11. And then we'll also sing a water system. The ability to drink water and all of our travels this year. Join them together. Then he is going to show the video of what is the eighth principle.
Buddhism.
Then he's going to introduce music. And at that point, he's going to have to walk from the pulpit to his office. We were getting feedback and a lag because we're having him in the same room.
Oh,
We're going to broadcast YouTube side by side.
okay. That works. Well, that's a solution I hadn't thought of.
We'll see how it goes the first time. So anyhow, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So I guess on this feed it'll just be our conversation. Can I sign in to watch?
Yes.
I can turn all the.
I sent you the link to YouTube, and that's what
Oh, to YouTube.
Yeah, so you'd have to watch it on a different device, probably.
Yeah, I can do that. So the link that. When did you send the YouTube this morning?
No, I sent that a year or two ago.
Okay. Hold on. No, I should be able to pull it up.
E flat, B flat, E flat, G. Yeah, we didn't go through all of this stuff.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Poole. I'm your worship associate this morning, and we want to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Roanoke. If this is your first time with us, we're very glad that you're here and hope you will join us in the garden for coffee after our service. We also want to welcome our church members who are joining us on YouTube. And if you have something that you would like to add during the Lifelines part of the service, please use the chat function and on YouTube for that. Our minister is Reverend Walter LaFleur. He's with us today. This morning's service is in dialogue with the eighth principle with Paula Cole-Jones and our own Reverend Walter. Paula Cole-Jones is actually one of the original designers of the eighth principle. She had a wonderful workshop for some of us yesterday, and we will also be doing the water service, correct? Okay. The words of welcome: whoever you are, whomever you love, however you express your identity, whatever your situation in life, whatever your experience of the holy, as you come seeking love, your presence here is a gift. Whether you are filled with sadness, overflowing with joy, needing to be alone with yourself, or eager to engage with others, all who welcome all are welcome here. And our covenant, we commit to supporting each other with respect and direct communication as we work in community to explore spiritual growth and to be a force for good in the world.
Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh.
Good morning. Today's a special day. Today we'll gain a particular experience of this thing we call the interconnectedness of all existence. This morning we celebrate one of my favorite UU traditions. It's the ingathering water ceremony. It's intended to exemplify who we are as a faith community, one by one by one by one. Today we also have a really special time planned for you. It's a special privilege to hear the words and the voice of a pillar of Unitarian Universalism, a birthright. UU, Paula Cole-Jones, will be in dialogue with us and with me. She speaks directly to who we are as a faith community, and perhaps more importantly, who we are invited to become. Our chalice lighting words. Teresa, will you light our chalice? Light the chalice for us. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral heart, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. Words of Leslie Pohl Kasbach.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of
The water ceremony comes to us from the Women and Religion Continental Covenant of Unitarian Universalists in East Lansing, Michigan. It began in November of 1980. It was created as a way for women who lived far apart to connect the work each was doing locally, to connect it as a whole. It's come to be used as an ingathering, a homecoming ritual for UU congregations, perhaps around the world, symbolizing the coming together of individuals into a community of faith. I'm going to ask Jesse to walk us through the detail and the, how do you call it? The process is a good word. You want to?
You want a microphone?
Go ahead.
Okay. Because we're also still staying safe with each other, I'll come through and do it by section here in the sanctuary. And I'll demonstrate by pouring some symbolic water first. We do have a pitcher of water that you can pour from, representing yourself. If you didn't bring water, that's perfectly fine. And I'll demonstrate that way. And then I will stand in front of each group. And we ask that you come up as a family. Little, big, young, old, come up as a family and pour your water into our receptacles so that we are gathered in and joined together.
Shall we gather at the river, where bright angels meet and throng, with this crystal light forever, flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather at the river, a beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. On the margin of the river, washing up in silver spray, we will walk and worship ever, all that beholden day. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river, soon our pilgrimage see. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with a melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river.
In recognition that the world is round and that we are connected in our moment, our current moment, and our past. This is water from our ceremony from last year.
Years and years before.
And years before. Blessed are we to find one another in friendship and kinship and in faith. This is who we are. Blessed be. Do we have a video coming?
What is the eighth principle? Well, you know our 7 principles, right? They're things that matter to us, things that guide how we are as a community, how we treat each other, and what we want to bring more of into the world. Just like each of us is always learning and growing, we know our principles have to grow sometimes too. This is the story of the 8th principle. A few years ago, some UU leaders spoke up. They told us these principles we love, they left something out. Like many who'd come before them, they spoke about how people still aren't being treated fairly because of the color of their skin, or where they come from, or other things that make them who they are. And that happens not only in the world at large, but even in our congregations, even in this one. So we need to do more to make sure that all people can feel welcome and loved here. We need to say more about our commitments to fight against racism, because racism hurts everybody. In fact, it hurts all 7 of our principles. And so, the 8th principle was born. The 8th principle is a commitment to fight against racism and oppression, and to build a beloved community of love and trust and belonging here in our church and in the world around us. We're going to be talking about the 8th principle a lot this spring, learning about it and what it means for this community. What does the 8th principle mean to you?
I'd like to invite our kindergarten to 5th grade young people to follow Jesse for your Sunday experience. Paula Cole Jones is a management consultant, diversity strategist with over 20 years of experience in designing and facilitating workshops and dialogues for leaders and organizations. She's an innovator of institutional change. She's also the author of a UU magazine cover story, Reconciliation as a Spiritual Discipline. And she's editor of a Skinner House book called Encounters, Poems about Race, Ethnicity, and Identity. Paula is a co-leader for adoption of the 8th principle and was recently named as a member of the UUA Article 2 Commission. And she's recently received an honorary doctorate from Meadville Lombard Theological School. I met Paula when I did my internship at All Souls. She's a special person. Pay attention to what she has to say.
The department did what they had to do. They said it right by the girl. Would you rather I'd gone to prison? It wasn't rape.
He running his mouth again.
Here's my whiskey.
It's about time.
Hi, just testing the sound. Hi, just testing the sound. Hi, just testing the sound.
Patience. This morning we're using multiple modes of communication, so we've got some crosstalk.
I haven't suggested anything. Paula, do you have everything turned off on your end? Paula, do you have everything turned off on your end?
I think so. Let me.
Sounds like there's something playing in the.
I'll turn my phone off.
It's probably not you, but we can't find anything that's on. Can you turn your YouTube feed off? If you're watching on YouTube?
I'm not connected to the internet on that computer. Yeah.
In the background or anything?
My phone is off. Let me try one more thing.
Maybe just shut us down. So
Oh, none of my things are connected to the internet.
You talk. Okay, that's fine. We're just gonna try cutting this one off and have you speak and see if that matters. Does that work? So we're gonna sign out for a minute.
So, good morning. You wanted me to speak. I don't know how I get feedback from you. Hi, Reverend Walter or Lynn, is there any way for you to let me know where we are and what we should do right now? I can, thank you. Okay. Hello. Hi, Roanoke. You're going to hear a ring in just a second as I rebooted my phone for backup communication. So good. Reverend Walter, are you there? Hi, how are you? This is the age. Hi. There we are. Yeah, I can see you too. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Seems like you fixed it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I can. Sure. You mean speaking like into our content? Let me say I really appreciated the water ceremony this morning, and you putting it in the context of its origins, the idea that women kind of designed that as a way of coming together into community, I think is very significant and certainly connected to the work that we are doing and what we talked about yesterday. Yeah. In fact, as we talk about the principles, you said that happened around 1980. It was in the 80s that the women in our association led the movement to rewrite our principles so that they were rewritten to take out the male dominant language and to make our principles more inclusive, more gender neutral. So there was a lot happening during that decade around change and inclusion. So are we going to be in dialogue, Reverend Walter? Okay. I hear you well, yes. I, I am. I'm waiting for you. Thank you. Well, let me start by saying there are 220 UU congregations and related organizations that have adopted the eighth principle. So it's a growing movement, and most of that has happened in the past 2 years. The eighth principle was established to help us to really fulfill on the promise of Unitarian Universalism and our principles. How do we make it accessible to people who are seeking of progressive or liberal faith community such as ours? And I think that there are many people who are seeking. In fact, some of you may have had this experience yourself. And Reverend Walter, you have probably also heard the stories of people who say they came to a congregation, to the UU congregation, and sat in, and their first service that they cried through much of the service because they did not know that this existed. Right. So to get that kind of reaction from people who, and I think people across the spectrum, across racial identity, across gender or, all of our identities, for people to be able to report that. It's like a tremendous relief and release to find yourself in a community that resonates with your values. So the eighth principle is here to help us to deliver that promise to more and more people. And how do we do it? We need to stretch. We need to stretch our thoughts about community and stretch it beyond some of the really historic norms, right? I talked yesterday about the limitation of thinking about church as a family, because families are fairly small and closed. There are not a lot of ways to enter into a family. And so if we think about church as a community of communities, it just has the potential to really blossom in ways that we have not yet discovered. So the eighth principle then is, I couple it with the community of communities, because that's where it finds, I think, its most fulfillment, its most power. When we are acknowledging the different ways that we come into church and connect with various groups of people who share, our interest or ways of doing things. And then together we form and sustain this multi-generational, intergenerational community. Another powerful thing about this, and the more I do my work, the more things kind of shift in my own mind, that community really is the center of church, not family, not individuals. Community is the center of church. And the longevity of the church community, it changes the way that we I think about our time together in the contemporary times, because a church community spans, potentially hundreds of years, right? And how old is your church? 60 years, yeah. And so you're still relatively young, but the church, the community will expand far beyond any of our time here. And when we start to think about community from that perspective, we have a different take on what it means to belong to something bigger than ourselves, and how do we sustain it and keep it healthy and keep it relevant in the times in which we live. Yeah, yeah, very good. I agree with you. And yet, family is the traditional way that people think of church. So it has a lot of meaning, even if we don't think about it. It's still operational in church. One of the things, that I try to remind people, because sometimes the idea of leaving the family identity or metaphor behind can be troubling for some people. But if we shift church to a community of communities, you don't lose the qualities of family. The family does not become a limitation on church and how it functions and who comes and who goes. So you can still have the kind of connectedness with people in the church, that you have with family, but it takes church out of one thing and everyone needing to agree on everything in order for that one thing to stay healthy and intact. And if you have a community of communities, then you can have a lot of different ways of doing things as opposed to the family feeling threatened if everyone does not agree. You know, that is a dynamic in church as well. So as I say, it gives us maximum flexibility in order to optimize our Unitarian Universalist experience. So that's a bit of a complicated question. You have to think about this on two different tracks. What we did yesterday, what we are doing is a grassroots organizing effort that began we wrote the eighth principle in 2013. We got our first adoptions in 2017. So this has not been a quick process. And the adoptions now are continuing. That's our grassroots organizing. And we ask congregations to adopt it rather than waiting for something to happen from national. And it's going to have its most impact at the local level because that's where most people will make their connection with Unitarian Universalism. At the same time, we are working nationally to review our principles and our sources. There is a special commission that was called in 2020 to do that work. Now, our job, I am one of the commissioners, our job is to give the board a proposal in January 2023. Proposed changes. We're still working on that, so I can't tell you specifically what will be in it, but those changes then will be brought to the General Assembly in June of 2023 for a vote. But they have to be voted on twice. So if we pass in 2023, we have another year and it comes back to a vote in June of 2024. Well, I tell people, do not wait for that process. Let's make this happen now because the more adoptions we have now, the more support we would have for national change. And if in the case it does not make it all the way through the process, we still have this, right? So nothing can really stop the work that we are doing now. And something that is central to Unitarian Universalism, and it does get addressed by the eighth principle and by the community of communities, and that is that pluralism is central for us, central to Unitarian Universalism, theological pluralism, and really we work very hard at identity pluralism. And so the eighth principle will help us to fulfill that more robustly than we have to this date. Yes. And do I have the words right in front of me? I should have them. I'm going to read them. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you. We can start with one of the I think, important parts of Unitarian Universalist theology, and that is the understanding or belief that revelation is never sealed. And so if we apply this to our principles, you know, as we learn and as we change, as society changes, our we've designed our principles so that we come back and we take a look at what those principles are. So if you think about the changes since the 1980s, when the principles that we have now are pretty much adopted, to where we are today, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the last few years. And so the eighth principle reflects some of the changes, some of what we've learned over the years. And as I mentioned yesterday, in 1997, our association passed a resolution to become an anti-racist association. You know, we work on dismantling oppressions across the board, but that was 25 years ago. I really encourage everyone to take a look at that resolution to see what that commitment was. The eighth principle actually grows out of our ongoing work to fulfill that commitment. And but we had not gone back and reflected in our principles what we've learned since we've been on that journey, what we've learned about other ways that we do the work of inclusion. So revelation is never is not sealed. And this is the age of technology as we experience today. We are learning at such a rapid rate. We are connected with people around the country, around the world, and we see things from different perspectives. People have voices now that did not have voices before. And so all of those things are changing who we are as global community, as a national community. And the eighth principle then helps us to have the agility, the flexibility to move with the changes in society.
Statements of belief, and that humans, being fallible, do not always live to our principles. My concern, my push is to have us get us out of our heads and not be so tethered to the belief statements. And I want us to manifest our beliefs. And I think the thing that I hold up most strongly for the eighth principle is it is the only principle who holds us accountable or asks us to be accountable for behavior rather than appreciating concepts and beliefs.
You know, something funny happened, I guess it was maybe 2 General Assemblies ago, as I was preparing for a workshop. And we were recording, and the evening before, I went back and I looked at the principles, and it just struck me. And each of the 7 principles can be read from such an individualist perspective, what it means to me and for me. And it just really hit me in a way that it hadn't before. I agree with you. Our principles are wonderful. But with that, what I just described, I think often we interpret them from a very individual perspective. The eighth principle is calling us into a more community-centered perspective, so that the principle is important, not just only in terms of what it means to me, but how I engage in community with other people who, and in particular with people who have been perhaps marginalized or left out, or people who may not always be heard. So it's not just what the principle means to me, it's what it means in our relationships with each other. And so there was a shift that happened when that dawned on me. And I encourage people, go back and look and see how much of that principle is our own interpretation as opposed to a shared interpretation. The eighth principle then gives us a shared interpretation about how to live them out that we did not have before.
I think we're running toward the end of our time together. So I guess I'm interested in knowing if there's anything that is particularly pertinent in your mind's eye that needs to be said this morning, either about Unitarian Universalism in general, where we are in our faith communities, given the context of the larger world we live in.
Yeah, I think that this is an exciting time because there are a lot of changes, just like coming back together after the pandemic has had us working virtually. So this is a great opportunity to make change. I think that there are many people, and there will be people who will be seeking communities like ours. Again, they have to be able to discover that we exist. I think that I am optimistic that Unitarian Universalism is on the threshold for growth. Growth is dependent on us being able to look at things with new eyes and not just to rush to put things back together the way that they were in the comfortable way that we knew. And so I do want to share that because I am encouraged. And I will say another thing that really excites me about the eighth principle is that young people who are brought to religious education or who grow up in Unitarian Universalism will have this as second nature, just like young people have grown up with technology. So some of the questions that we may be asking as adults with the eighth principle, young people, they're not asking those questions because this is the world that they live in already. And so I encourage you all to really take a look at how you can help to create the space for belonging for many more people in your community, and certainly for your young people to have these values as they grow.
As has always been true since I met you in 2009, I so appreciate your thinking. I appreciate your willingness to push for betterness. And
Gentle push, right?
Oh, yes. Well, yes.
Yes, I do. And, you know, it's like, I do, I mean, this is my community. I have a vision. I think many of us have a vision and we share. And so we just need to be able to support each other in how we reframe what Unitarian Universalism is for the future. We can do this.
And I love, and I'm just going to name the truth of it. I am convinced that as a Black person experiencing Unitarian Universalism, we bring a particular experience to life that many of our colleagues, our fellow travelers simply do not have. And I think the eighth principle really speaks and holds up that truth around accountability of behavior rather than words and thoughts. So thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I enjoyed my time with you all this weekend, and I will be watching. I'm here to support you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe I left all my paperwork in the other office. I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to experience Paula. She is just a force of life in this universe of ours. Thank you so very much. Now is the time for us to feed the foundations of who we are. And being in a capitalistic system, that means money. So I want to ask you to contribute to the health of this congregation and its future by receiving your offering this morning. Thank you.
Spirit of God, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving light the shake of justice. Bruised holy clothes, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
And your offering, as well as your commitment to who we are, will grease the skids into our future. We're grateful. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jane Harrison from the Caring Committee, and we have many things we do as service to this church. But one of the things we do is we talk about the joys and concerns of this church, usually on Sunday morning. If you have a joy or a concern that you wish to share, you can contact the church office. You can contact Sally Garber, the chairman of the Caring Committee, or you can write it in the Lifelines book, which is on the altar. I'll get it in just a second. Or if you have a secret joy or concern that is important to you, we usually have a table with a bowl of water and pebbles in there, and you can put the pebble in there as your secret joy or concern. There are presently no joys and concerns inside the book that I can find, but we will now go, and Reverend Walter and I will light a candle for all the things that are in your heart, for all the people that you could not have, that could not be here.
Join me in a time of prayer and meditation, reflection. We are a fortunate people. We who have personal agency, We who have the wherewithal to be considered independent, we who can be classified as privileged, we are fortunate people. Even those who are particularly aware of others' greater privilege are privileged. Our culture prompts us to notice those with more and supports blindness too often to those with less of virtually anything deemed of value, despite a stated belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Such a statement of belief can serve to hide all of our behavioral biases, a statement in the belief in the dignity of every person, a statement. May we seek community of accountability to our values, accountability to our principles, and accountability to one another. Amen.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, that the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh, yeah, yeah. 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 Oh, yeah,
Well, Rev Walter started the morning by asking me about how flexible I could be, and I have taken that on as a challenge. We just have a few reminders this morning. The Pledge to End Racism workshop, we still have openings in that, and Lorraine Fleck will be in the garden afterwards to answer any questions. Also, a reminder from our auction team, our very hardworking auction team, that this is the last week to submit your auction items. And if you have not had the opportunity to bid on the auction items and participate in them, it is really a lot of fun. People put a lot of hard work in it. We're having our monthly Green Team Climate Rally. That will be at 12:15. Carol Rowan is the one who's leading that and has plenty of signs for us to be able to take advantage of our great location at Brandon and Grandin. So you can see Carol. And a reminder too, you probably saw this in the newsletter, but our youth will be doing a car wash next Sunday during service. So you could come and get your spiritual inspiration, and they will take up to 12 cars and have a nice clean car when you get ready to leave. Also, there were some announcements in this weekly newsletter. that the women's group is meeting this coming Thursday. That is not correct. The women's group will meet the first and third Thursday, so the following week. And also, there is an environmental rally that's listed at 5 o'clock next Sunday. We'll get some clarification on that. Neither Carol Rowan or Bob Egbert knew anything about it, so we're going to check that out. Was that flexible enough, Red?
You did good.
Okay.
I look forward to meeting folks. We will be meeting for the meetup following the service this morning. Go from here today knowing that you are valued as a human being, valued because of who you are and who you are becoming, and valued because you contribute to who we are. Go into your week in peace.
But don't leave yet because we skipped the closing music.
Oh, well, flexibility is important.
Is it on now? Okay. So this song is apparently really hot right now. I didn't know that when I picked it, but it is. And this is We Shall Be Known by Ma Muse. And we've just learned it. So we haven't incorporated the dancing yet or the clapping. But if you'd like to clap along when I clap, then that would be wonderful. We'll take it when I clap. Okay.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Where will the newcomer meetup be? Outside? Literally outside? I look forward to seeing newcomers outside soon. Go into your week in peace.